morning. How are you? So excited to be back. You may be seated this morning. I had a funny, I get the privilege of talking to so many different people after we finish up every week, and then, just recounting the events of the day over the course of the week. And I had someone come up to me and she said, my grandmother has the funniest story that she always shares about this whole idea of only answering what your children ask. And, little boy comes home and he asks his mom, where do I come from? So she takes a deep breath, she musters up the strength, and she lays it all out, every nitty-gritty detail. She just goes for it. Very proud of herself, she sits back, and he kind of blinks. 8-year-olds, will blink at that and says, okay, but Bobby comes from Kentucky. Where do I come from? And I thought, that is so true. Now, of course, that's all in jest, and you've probably heard that before, but it is so true. And just, so I thought that was so funny. I just had to share that with you this morning. So normally at this part of the program, I share this information in quite a different number of places. And this is generally the portion that's called, Why Do Children Misbehave and How to Be a Big Fat Meanie? So just keep that in mind, and this is how we're going to do that. And of course, that's very tongue-in-cheek, and that would be necessarily from the child's perspective, how to be a big fat meanie, because it's not fair, right? But it's all in love, and I love that we were talking and singing about love this morning, and going through Proverbs, and we're going to look at a few more of those this morning. But the bottom line is, because we love our children, we parent them, and we take up, the strength to lead them in this direction, no matter what the world tells us. Because if we go by that, tomorrow it'll be completely different. And the next day it'll be even different, more different from that. So we can't go by that. So along those lines, the cost of new ideas in our society, the cost of changing the way we look at our parenting has taken us, and all of these come from a book called Parent Babel, but it's very true. And Babel, just like the Tower of Babel, just nonsense and just incomprehensible. It's taken us from a position of honoring to dishonoring, from leadership to relationship. We've talked about that at length. From love and leadership together to just love alone. Now I say love alone, and we're going to talk about the way we define that. From citizenship, thinking of others besides ourselves, to selfship, just ourselves. I need to be happy all the time. From macromanagement to micromanagement. Helicopter moms, every little thing stressed out. And from boundaries to virtually none. We lack some serious boundaries, not just in our parenting, but in society in general. We lack a sense of commitment. I would add commitment to that. Commitment has gone by the wayside. Commitment to our relationships, commitment to our workplace, commitment to anything. If it doesn't make us happy, we give it up. We step back. And it's caused a lot of heartache. So all this is called common sense parenting. And we all agree that this is pretty much common sense. Everything I've shared with you, nothing groundbreaking here, right? Pretty much common sense. So why aren't we all sharing this? Why aren't we all taking up a banner and sharing this with everyone that we know? Because we're afraid that we're going to get, backlash, because we're afraid we're going to be turned down, because we're afraid of the resistance that we might get. Let me tell you something. If you approach a parent out of love, and we're talking about love, and say, you know what, and you share this information, I can't tell you how many parents, inevitably, every single time I speak to a group, I have a parent come up to me and say, I wish I'd have heard this a long time ago. I wish I had heard this a long time ago. Why aren't they hearing it? Why aren't we sharing it? If they resist you, if a parent resists you, you don't want your kids hanging out with their kids anyway, so don't worry about it. If they're going to buck you, then that's not who you want to surround yourself with anyway. So don't worry about it. But don't be afraid to share this with other people. Don't let a moment go by and have someone come up to you. It's heartbreaking. Tears, heartbreaking. My children are adults, and I wish I'd have known this a long time ago. This is not difficult. This is not difficult stuff. Now, let's go back to the idea of self-esteem. Raise your hand if you want a child with high self-esteem. Good job. The opposite of a child or a person with high self-esteem is a person with high self-respect. That is the opposite of high self-esteem. Now, if I can respect myself, it is because my behavior, my thoughts, my actions are respectful of those around me. There is honor in what I do. There is honor in the way that I live my life and live out my faith. So if I can be respectful to those around me, then I can respect myself. And that is what we want for our children. That is the opposite of a high self-esteem. Proverbs 22, we've been talking about this, 22:6. Start children off on the way that they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. You know from a very early age the gifts and talents that you can see in your children. Start them off. Get them going. Seek those around you. This is where that whole notion of being on the same page with your spouse and being on the same page with your children's teachers and coaches, they see it too. They see it too. Work together. Foster that child. Grow them. Grow them for the Lord. Yeah, but my kids act a fool on a regular basis. Why do they do that? Well, you gave birth to them. That's why. I mean, that's the short answer. But Proverbs 22:15 goes on to say, folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline will drive it away. Here in the South, we tend to focus on that rod as one particular form of discipline, punishment. But the rod of discipline is all forms that we use to grow our children. It takes many different forms. Don't make this about you. Why do my children do this? Again, you know, we talk about excuses. They're tired, they're teething, they're sleepy, they're hungry. Don't make excuses and don't make this about you. It's not about you. Other than giving birth to your children, you had nothing to do with the sin in their life, you personally. It's not about you. It's about them and the choices they make and the strong influence that you are on your children. If we want them to choose wisdom, if we want them to grow in wisdom, and I totally agree, I love the book of Proverbs. We're working through this summer as a family, as a matter of fact. If we want them to grow in wisdom, we have to be conscious about it. We can't just mention, one little nugget here, one little nugget there, and expect that it's going to take. Not the way we're bombarded on TV, news, social media. That's a whole lot louder than you ever thought about being. And if you're not talking to your children more than they're being saturated with that kind of knowledge, you're not going to be a strong influence. You're not going to be a strong influence. Now, I'm the big fat mean mother. How to be a big fat meanie. I'm living this one out. It doesn't give her children cell phones. They're 11 and 13. They don't have cell phones. Now, they would not clap with you, I can assure you. We've had a lengthy discussion. Well, Mom, if we can come up with a way that you don't have an answer for why we shouldn't have one, can we get one? I said, well, you can try. So it was very lengthy. My daughter launched into, well, if the school we go to decides to have a soccer team and I try out and I make the soccer team and I'm at practice and practice gets changed, I said, well, you're the only one without a cell phone, so borrow one of your friends. When we limit that, and there's so many parents, well, I am conscious about it, and I'm putting all these safeguards and all these precautions in place so that they can't get to this. Let me tell you something. I watched a 5-year-old little girl bypass the card catalog system in the library and get onto the internet. Don't tell me that you're going to put enough protection in place for your children. You're not. If you don't even offer it, it's less you have to worry about. You cannot be with them all of the time. I will be the first person to tell you that. You cannot protect them from every little thing, but you can try as hard as you can. They don't need all of this knowledge. To grow in wisdom is to grow at an appropriate rate. To be a child, they need to be children. They don't need to be adults at 5, 6, and 7. And I'm not just talking about technology. I'm talking about the clothes that you put on them. I'm talking about the discussions that you have in front of them and the discussions you allow them to be a part of. A child does not need to be a part of every adult conversation. You are responsible for encouraging their purity as long as you can. And purity is not just in a sexual sense. Purity in finances, purity in actions, purity in relationships. beyond just those of a romantic nature. And if you don't take a stand with your children, I can assure you there's someone else out there who will, and they won't be on the same page that you are. So to grow in wisdom, we have to be conscious of it. It has to be a daily conversation. Those of you with children old enough to have the talk, you can't just have that talk one time. That talk is all the time. And it's not just, don't do that. Why? What does the Lord say? Marriages are ruined every day because a parent didn't share this information with their child, because a loved one didn't share this information, and they messed it up before they even got started. People are suffering in their marriages. You might be one of those people suffering in your marriage because of what you didn't know as a teenager. They don't need that kind of pressure. There's enough stress in life without heaping that on them so young. Let them be a child. Now, I come down hard on kids, and I do believe that we need to have a firm hand with them. But we also got to let them be. Let them be kids. Let them enjoy life. It's going to come too fast, too soon. And when you do have to have that conversation, a little bit of the magic dies. Don't take that away from them before they need to. Don't take that away from them. Now, let's lighten up just a little bit. Part of growing in wisdom is learning, and there are consequences that come into play here. And we do have those moments where we have to dole down a punishment or two. And, you know, typically mothers, but sometimes fathers, it just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. I've known mothers to stand in the corner with their children. I've known mothers to weep, to go in and apologize. I'm so sorry, you can come out of your room. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. What are you thinking? I just want to go, Don't let it stress you out. You're doing this because you love them. Now, there's an extreme. You have abusive situations, and that is not what I'm advocating. I'm talking about punishment and just hatefulness without love. We can't grow and teach our children without loving them, knowing why we're doing this. And let's go back. We can't always justify it to their satisfaction. That's why we don't explain ourselves all of the time, because they don't understand. They haven't grown in wisdom yet. Many of us are still growing. They will understand it when they are in your position. So don't feel the need to justify yourself to your children. They're not going to agree with you anyway. So you're wasting your time. But they will appreciate it. Though they can't always verbalize it, they will appreciate that you are consistent, that you love them enough. And sometimes, if you've made this very clear to your children, perhaps your child gets invited to spend the night somewhere, and it's kind of an iffy situation. Maybe this is a new friendship, maybe it's something, and you know deep down in your heart. And if you've made a point to your children to parent in this way, when they come to you and say, hey, can I go to Joey's house? And it's one of these kind of things, they are counting on you to say no. They're counting on you to say no. They trust you. That's where that security comes in. That's where, you are fostering that relationship where they can trust you. So when these moments like this is when you want them to come to you. You want them to trust you. You want them to seek your guidance, to grow in wisdom because you've been consistent. It doesn't just happen. So when you have to do those punishments, now, there's an unwritten law that we don't rat each other out as parents. So because we have little ears in the congregation, I won't be sharing all of the wonderful things that you can do. But if you need a little list, you call me and I will hook you up because I got some good ones. But I can't tell you because then we share all of our secrets and, that won't work. But I'll give you one. I'll give you one little nugget you can take home with you. So I'm in a class probably 2 or 3 years ago, and we're sharing our success stories for the week. How'd your week go? What'd you do? Did you use? I always tell parents, did you give your kid the finger? And so they go, this finger. When you're talking and having a discussion, wait. When we turn around and go, now say, excuse me, Mommy's talking. Now what do you want? You might as well just let them interrupt your conversation. But if you do this, maintaining your posture, your position of authority and leadership, that one little finger says, I see you. I know that you're there. I will get to you in a moment. I'm having a conversation. Nothing wrong with giving your child this finger. So we're sharing all of these discussions, and this one mother said, well, my daughter slammed the door. She got so angry, and she just slammed the door. Well, a lot of parents say, just take the door off the hinges, which is rocking. I mean, that's a good one to use, especially if you have an older child. She said, so I made her come back, and I made her slam it 100 times, equally as hard. And I thought, dear Lord, to have to listen to that 100 times. I mean, it was one of those that shook the house situations, you know. But after a while, you can imagine that arm gets a little tired. So we think about it a little differently the next time we want to slam the door. So I thought, that is awesome. So I told my husband about it, and we were waiting, and I didn't have to wait too long. About a week later, my daughter decided to all the way up the stairs. And I looked at my husband, and I said, this is it. He looks at me like I'm crazy. He said, woman, do whatever. I said, oh, love, come hither, sweet child. So she comes, and I mean, if you're not having fun with this, you are missing out. Let me tell you something. Parenting should not be the most stressful thing you do in your life. Trust me. It's something important that you do, but it's not the most important thing. And if you're not having fun with it, you are missing out. So Precious comes down the stairs. And I said, I thought this out. This is where you anticipate the foolish things that your children will do. You know your kids. You know what's going to set them off. You know where they're going to have their moments of foolery. So I'd already decided I didn't want to listen to that 100 times. I'm not a fool. I've grown in wisdom. And I said, I'm going to need you to go back up those stairs equally as hard 50 times. Just as hard as you did. And she kind of, really? Like, you serious? Yes, I'm serious. Well, here's the catch. I have carpet on the stairs, and she was barefoot. So she starts off, and she's, kind of half giggle like, she's crazy, but I didn't know she was this crazy. So she's like, stomp. I said, no. Just as hard as you did the first time. So we start, I said, all the way up and all the way down. All the way up and all the way down. Well, about 15, 20 times in, it wasn't nearly so funny anymore. So the next time she went to stomp up the stairs, it was... We've never stomped up the stairs again. Have fun with it. Be creative. I had another mother, she told me she had a series of pumpkins on her stairs outside the steps on the front porch of the house near Halloween, fall. The little boy loved to play with them. He liked to rearrange them on the steps. Well, one was starting to rot, and she knew that it was going to be just a big deal when she had to throw it away. You know how that goes, right? The world is crumbling down. So she decided, she was so excited, she saw me months later. She came up to me and she said, I got to tell you what I did. And I said, come on. She said, well, it was rotting, but he wasn't doing whatever his chore was he was supposed to be doing in the house because he was younger and she was starting to, give him some responsibility in the home. So she said, I decided this is a win-win. And again, you got to make it work for yourself sometimes too. God's given you these little things, take them. Thank you, Lord, is what you say. So she said, I told him, if you don't do X, Y, Z, whatever it was he was supposed to be doing, one pumpkin's going in the garbage. Well, she already knew which pumpkin was going in the garbage because it was the one that was rotting. And she said, of course he didn't do it. And her husband, what does he say? That's so harsh. Harsh, really? It's going to rot. So he, of course, didn't do what he was supposed to do, and she threw it away, and there was much wailing and gnashing of teeth. But guess what? The next day, he did what he was supposed to do because he didn't want another pumpkin to be gone. Of course, her husband came in, and he said, are we going to buy another one to replace it? No, that defeats the purpose. But have fun with it. Have fun with it. Yes, there do need to be consequences. There do need to be consequences. And sometimes you do have to give a punishment because we are molding and shaping and encouraging the way that they think about the world around them. So do it, but don't be thrown by it. The respectful behavior, the way that they present themselves, is worthy of respecting myself. I have a high self-respect. Now, when we talk about how to do this and talking about this every single day, and we say, give them the why. Why do we do this? Why do we believe this? Well, you can do this whether it be a small instance, those little moments, to really big life experiences. Little things like, you're picky eaters, or they don't particularly like garbanzo beans. Let's just go with that one. So they go to, potluck, or they go to a friend's house. Give them the tools, equip them, empower them with a way to be polite, to think of others. Love is doing what's best for the other person. When your child is allowed to turn down food in your home and you fix another meal, God forbid, they are disrespecting you. When they go to someone else's home, I don't like that. You would be mortified because it's disrespectful to the person that has prepared the meal, and you wouldn't dream of asking a stranger to prepare a different meal for your child. I hope not. So give them the tools. That's bad manners. That's not the way that we treat other people around us. But we don't just say, no thank you's not just enough. Think of the other person. They took time to prepare it. So what do you say? No thank you, but it looks delicious. Come on. What's wrong with that? No thank you, but it looks delicious. So I am acknowledging the time and effort you put into preparing this meal, and I am graciously declining taking a portion of your delicious garbanzo beans. I'm giving them the tools to equip them to think of other people. Now, that's a small instance. Think about laziness. Any of you got a lazy teenager at home, or a lazy young adult, or a lazy little child? Sleep until 1, 2 in the afternoon? This summer? I hope not. I hope you got them out cutting the grass, right? Amen. Cutting the grass. That's what they need to be doing. So we get into this laziness. You need to get up. You don't need to sleep all day. Well, I don't have school. So what? Get up. Get dressed. Be ready for the day. There are things that you can do. There are ways that you can contribute. Well, why can't I sleep all day? Well, then take them to the Word. There are lots of verses on laziness in the Bible. He who sleeps during the harvest is a disgraceful son. So I am preaching. Preach. Take them to the Word. I told you, you have an instruction manual. You have a book right here that tells you what you're supposed to do, and that tells your children what to do. Now, we can't just, pick the verses we like. Don't dishonor your mother and your father and leave it at that. I mean, that's a big one. When we get to that one, I speak that one really loudly with my children, clear my throat, and, the whole thing. And then when you get to the one about don't complain about anything, but pray about everything, those are good ones too. Memorize a couple of those, and you can use them when you have these daily conversations over and over and over and over, because that one's going to get used a lot. Use your leadership and authority so that they listen. I always told my kindergartners, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. When God created you, He wanted you to use your ears more than your mouth. That's why He gave you 2 of them, and He only gave you 1 mouth. We should be quick to listen and slow to speak. I got some giggling. I think some of you have used that one as well, right? I had a parent ask me the other day when I had shared the story about the stairs, and he looked at me, he said, I just have one question. He's very much the logical, methodical father. You do this, you get that. You do this, you get that. And he said, so what do you do when she doesn't do what you said? And I said, say that again? Well, when you told her to go up the stairs equally as hard 50 times, what if she didn't do it? I said, I don't understand the question. Well, if she didn't do it, I said, that's not an option. That's not an option. I never approach my kids with the thought that they might not do it. Never. If you have that doubt, they can smell that fear, and they're going to pick up on it. You reek of this odor. Not going to do it. I don't even know how you come up with a question like that. Authority, honor. There's got to be honor in your behavior. Your children have to see that you're growing in wisdom as well. And you're living out your faith in front of them. Don't keep your faith a secret. They need to see you in the Word. They need to see you, husbands, leading spiritually your family. Corporate worship. Quiet time at home. I love that you have a pastor that leads. We had a discussion last Sunday, maybe the Sunday before, about things going on outside of the church when it was important for you to be at church and not putting anything else above your time with the Lord. Sports, I'm a ball hater. But if done correctly, there can be honor in that. And there are ways that athletes can reach other folks. I'm not oblivious to that. But when we put everything, anything, all things before our time with our families and the Lord and fellow worshipers, but we don't ever put that front and center before these other things, if you won't miss a competition, a ball game, an event, whatever it is that you're involved in, because you have church or a church event, you need to reevaluate your priorities. What happens to that child? Because, they're all going pro, we think. What happens to that child who lives his whole life in the spotlight? The family, I'm talking, I know extended families who travel ball, big thing, travel around with this child. That's what the family does. There is no other activity. Talk about it growing a narcissist. What happens to that child when all he or she has known is what the family has just made all about him? Let's say, God forbid, he gets an injury. Has he been taught equally as much to grow his faith and to lean on the Lord? And Lord, why did this happen? He's going to be angry with the Lord. You can bet that's probably going to happen. But is he going to find joy in that trial? It's going to be a lot harder to teach that lesson. We forget all of that because we think nothing can happen. Let me tell you something. It's going to happen. If you haven't had your major moment yet, it's coming. Yeah, come on. It's coming. Don't put everything else above your faith. Live it out. Let your children, don't burden them with things that don't concern them, but let them see you have a minor disagreement. I've known folks never saw their parents argue. When they tried to enter into a relationship, it was really tough because they felt when you had the first argument, that was it. You were done. We'd all be divorced if that was the case. Let them see you be able to work that out, to forgive one another. Live it out. Why don't we dress this way? Why? Women, practice modesty in front of your girls. Vacation season. I have seen more body parts on my Facebook feed than I care to see. I don't even know what's on your clothes. I don't even know that. Be modest. We can't preach these things to our daughters. Wait until marriage. Wait until marriage. Wait until marriage. We're throwing it all out. We're flaunting it ourselves. How is that teaching our daughters to be modest? We can't be crude and laugh with our boys about boy things, men things, and expect that they're going to grow into gentlemen, respectful men. You can't have it both ways. So you have to decide, what do you want for your children? What's important to you? What are you going to make time for? What are you going to teach them? They can see when you're telling the truth, too. They see you when you're on the phone with the person you really don't want to talk to, and you're making them some excuse as to why you can't go somewhere that they've invited you. But then you're going to turn around and tell them, don't lie. was recently checking out in a big box store, it shall remain unnamed, and a young lady couldn't find the price on a particular item. She kept ringing it. She couldn't find a price. And she said, they're not going to check that receipt anyway. I'm just going to put it down here on the bottom of the buggy. About stroked out in the line. I said, no, ma'am. I said, I'm pretty sure it was this amount. I can walk back there. Well, it won't show up, and I don't have time to go back there and check it. I said, and she just kept on ringing like I wasn't even talking. I said, I've got to pay for that. I am not going to walk out of this store without paying for that item. And it finally got to her. Okay, how much? And she punched in the number. If she's doing that with me, how many other people is she doing that with? The stealing, that's lying. And had I gone along with that, what does that tell my children? You can snag that piece of candy, nobody's going to see it. If that kind of thing doesn't bother you, how can you teach it to your children? It's just like when your children do things and it's just gnawing at you and it's on your nerves and you feel like a broken record because you're addressing the same thing over and over and over and over. If you're the only one bothered by it, it's not going to change. So when these punishments that you have to dole out to your children come around, when it's something small like this, like saying pee-pee for a riot in the middle of kindergarten, just to be funny man and get attention, take time away from the teacher. If you don't have a huge consequence, it's not going to bother them. They have no incentive to change what they have done the next time they consider doing it. So as long as you're the only one bothered by it, it will not change. You have to make them be bothered by it. That is strong. I agree. It should be strong every time. We also need to teach our children. We're talking about how to think and how to approach these and living this out daily. Before we do anything with our children, and maybe you're trying to absorb all of this, I hope this defines most of you in your parenting. I hope what I'm up here saying is just encouraging you and you're like, yeah, we're doing this the right way. We got this. She's in our house. She knows how we do this. But if it's not, and you're trying to wrap your head around how to be this kind of parent, the first thing you need to do is go to the Lord in prayer. First thing you need to do is seek His guidance. We need to do that with everything that we do. We need to encourage our children to do the same thing. Two things had the most profound effect on me when I was growing up. One, in high school, our preacher preached a sermon, and he said, you young people, you can't go into your final exam or a test day and pray, Lord, help me do good on this test if you haven't cracked a book. You can pray, Lord, please help me remember what I've studied. That's a better prayer. And that stuck with me. And I thought, wow, He really does see everything we're doing. We can't pull the wool over His eyes at all. The second was a little later on, right after we were married, and I heard a gentleman say, talking about someone who was having a difficult time, but maybe had just a little bit of a lazy streak going, and he said, you know, you got to pray from behind the plow. And I thought, that is beautiful. You've got to pray from behind the plow. He gives us gifts and He gives us talents. And He wants us to seek Him out. Ask those questions, grow in wisdom, but we've got to do something with that. Can't just sit back and expect that it's going to fall on your doorstep. You got to pray from behind the plow. So if your child is struggling in a particular area, maybe it's something small. Maybe they're struggling in math. Whatever. Maybe they're struggling with how to make friends. Maybe they're struggling with their desire to just be a trouble magnet. Whatever the case may be, they need to go to the Lord in prayer, and you need to pray with them and teach them how to pray, how to come before the Lord. I'm struggling, Lord. I'm nothing without you. I need you. Give me the words to say. Give me the moments of clarity. And let them see you living that out as well. Now, all of this is done in love, but don't confuse love. We said we've gone from leadership and love to love alone, our cost of new ideas. Don't confuse love with bartering reasoning, explaining. That's not love. Well, if you pick up all your toys, you can have a cup of ice cream. If you're good all week in school, I had a parent come to me and she said, "You're not going to believe what my friend just did." She goes, she needs to come and talk to you. My daughter says, "Mama, I need some cards. I can just do like this." And we're going down the aisle in the Target. Anyway, she says, she told her child, the first week of kindergarten, if you make it through the first week of school without getting in trouble, we'll go to Discovery Place in North Carolina. Week 1 of kindergarten? For doing something you're supposed to do anyway? Where do you go for graduation? The moon? We think we're showing love to our children when we give them. They don't need to be paid for good grades. They don't need a reward because they behaved in school. They're supposed to do that. Now, your children would say, "I kind of like that 20 for every A. I kind of like that 10 for every B." Don't listen to her. Not every child is the same. Their best might be a C. And just because you don't knock it out of the park academically in school doesn't mean you won't be a success in life. There are far greater things for our children to learn than how to ace every single test. Just like I told you, I'd rather have a classroom full of children who didn't know anything rather than be, these brilliant 5-language ABCs backwards and forwards kids. Because you know what? A parent that's drilled that into their brains, they didn't have time to teach them any manners. They didn't have time to teach them anything else, how to be respectful. Doing for others has nothing to do with your academic ability. If you have older children and you're stressing out about college, they're not all going to college. That's okay. There are other things that you can do. You can get a trade. You can support your family. You can contribute in the home, the community. You can be a follower and preach it to everyone you know. That's what's important at the end of the day, not how many degrees you have hanging on the wall. Our priorities are so out of whack, and usually I stroke a bunch of teachers out when I say that, since I'm a teacher. That's just the way it is. There are a lot of other things our children can do, and they need to see us living that out. Hebrews 12:11, we're talking about discipline. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. This is true for us as well. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. That's what we're striving for. That's how we're growing. That's what we want our children to know. They're not going to like it. And as a parent, you now understand the saying, "This hurts me more than it hurts you." You understand that. It shouldn't stop you. But you understand it now. You didn't understand it because when your parents told you that as a child, you were going, "Yeah, right, whatever. You bend over. You take the belt." But now you get it. But you're doing it out of love, and you're not bargaining, you're not rewarding for expectation. You're expecting it, you're commanding it, and you're exempling it. Now, we've got to punish our children, just like we have to weed our gardens, right? If you don't weed your garden, what happens? Those of you that have gardens this summer, it goes to pot, right? So punishment is every bit as necessary to raising a respectful child, God-fearing child, if you're pointing them in that direction, than it is to weeding a garden. Now, some children respond better to an exorcism more than others. But I have such a strong-willed child. You don't understand. They are so strong-willed. We all are. There's not one person in here that doesn't want their way most of the time. You're all strong-willed. That's not specific just to your kid, her child, his child, their child in the back. They're all strong-willed. So don't come at me with their strong-willed. This just won't work. You just don't understand. Yes, I do. Yes, I do understand. We've all got that kid. But we feel like if we can label it, then it takes a little bit of the burden off of us. We don't have to accept it, and we don't have to address it. Well, they're strong-willed. Well, they're just, yeah, well, so are you. But your will needs to be strong enough that you are raising these children to be respectful. Don't give up just because somebody coined the phrase strong-willed. Don't throw in the towel just because they turn 14 or 15 and they're a teenager and, well, that's it. What's the point? What's the point of all the rest of this if that's what we do? Don't stop being consistent just because it gets a little bit tough. The older they get, you need to give them a little bit more freedom. I believe in giving them a lot of freedom. And if you've been consistent, they're going to be conscious of that freedom. And they're going to see it as responsibility. And how they handle it is going to be a reflection of how strong an encouragement you have been. Did they remember? Did they remember stomping up the stairs? Did they remember no shower, no movie, no ice cream for saying pee-pee? Did they remember all of that each and every time? Now, you can't just make a big front one week. You can't just go out of here the month of August after you've heard this all July and like, got this. And then just peter off by the end of the year. No. You got to keep on keeping on the whole time. It's not just a feel good. This is not meant to be feel good and boost you up and, oh yeah, that sounds great in the church doors, but when we get outside and we start going to lunch and they start whining in the back seat, okay, baby, okay, what do you want to do? You got to take it with you. You got to put it into action. Be consistent. And don't pick your battles. I had a mother ask me last week, I don't know where she is, how do you feel about picking your battles? You want to win the war. You don't pick and choose, because guess what? The one that you don't pick, the one that you're like, oh, I just don't feel like messing with that, that's going to be the one that goes full on. Because the next time it's a little bit more. And the next time it's up just a little bit more. We call that nipping it in the bloom before it becomes full. Weeding your garden. If you're only bothered by a behavior, it won't change. Now, if you need a little ego boost, I'm going to give you another little nugget. You feel like you have just repeated yourself and you don't feel like you're making an impression and maybe you need some guidance on how to make your punishments just a little bit bigger, I want you to invite over maybe a family that you're trying to share this information with. You can consider it a mission opportunity. And you have children that you know aren't necessarily getting this kind of parenting. It's just solely for you. It's completely selfish. You invite them over. Had some friends over one time and children were kind of, from the other family, and it's on the phone, and I heard my children say, shh, she's on the phone. We don't talk when she's on the phone. Have you had that discussion with your children? I'm on the phone. I'm on the phone. And I thought, praise Jesus, they've been listening the whole time. They got on to the other children and told them, shh, Mama's on the phone. We don't talk when Mama's on the phone. And they were getting on, and I thought, okay, so they've heard me. So when you need that ego boost, you invite those kids, those unruly children over, see if your kids are going to practice what you've been preaching, and then you go, yes. Don't feel like you're just falling by the wayside. The goal is to have our children be happily obedient, to recognize it. Happily obedient. I pick on my own kids a lot at their expense. They always say, Mom, are you talking about us? Are you talking about us? No, baby. But I will say that this happens, and it makes for such a peaceful home. During the school year, to watch them grow, this past school year, we've recently moved way out, so we live about an hour away from their school. So we have to leave pretty early in the morning. But by the end of the year, They were up, lunches were packed, the dogs were fed, put away, and our coffee was made before we even got up. And I thought, all right, girl could get used to this. It can happen. This that I'm laying out for you, textbook for my own childhood. I think my parents wrote this, I'm not sure. I can remember doing very similar things with my brother growing up because we were looking for ways to please our parents. They had truly become the center of our attention. We were not the center of theirs, and we were looking for ways to show our love to them, to be happily obedient, and to do for others. Now, when your energy isn't drained by making this the most stressful thing, and you're not looking at this parenting job as the most difficult thing you have ever done in your life, don't ever define parenting that way. It is so hard. It is so hard. It's not. You're making it that way. Then you can enjoy your family, your time together as a family, putting that first. And when your children leave the nest, they're still going to value family. That's still going to be front and center, and there's going to be loyalty there. You don't want your children to leave home and never contact you again because you can't do anything else for them. You can't give them anything else, so I'm done with you. You want that family loyalty. You want your children to cling to that. And this is what you're trying to teach them. Don't you want to get to friendship with them? Don't you want to get past all of this? And then get to be grandparents? Next week we're going to talk about being loyal to our families and what that looks like in the home. Be consistent. Enjoy your children. Be creative. Don't get mired down. If you're stressed out, talk to somebody. Talk to your pastor. This isn't supposed to be this hard. What do I need to change about me? Where do I need to go? Can you point me to the Word so that I can seek out and I can know His will for my life? Teach your children. Enjoy your children. Love your children. Truly love your children. Let us pray. Dear, I thank you again for our time together. Thank you for the families that are represented here. Thank you, Lord, for the encouragement that they are to one another. I pray that they take up this banner, Lord, that they seek out ways and opportunities to encourage other families. This isn't just for the benefit of our own children, but for the children all around us that are coming up, Lord. This is the next generation of leaders, Lord. We don't need more leaders that are self-absorbed. We don't need more leaders that only think of one group or another. We need to raise our children to show love and to be leaders themselves, to fear you, to be in awe of you, to love you, and to want to grow their own children for you. This comes full circle, and we want them to bear that fruit. Give us the strength, Lord. Give us the guidance to guide them, to live out our faith daily in our homes, to not just think we're one and done, but every conversation, Lord, let your word permeate the message that we're trying to get across to our attention, and let their ears be open, Lord. Give us the strength, give us the guidance. Continue to mold us into encouragers of one another and our own families. Thank you for our time together, Lord. Keep us safe as we leave here, Lord. We pray all these in your holy and precious name. Amen.
Thank you, Stacy.